Hello again, and welcome back to another video build. This time around, we're just having some fun painting this wonderful figurine, sharing some simple painting techniques, and some other tricks along the way. Hope you enjoy it.
You had me falling so hard, baby, yeah, now I get it. You got heads turning, and you don't even try.
I'll be painting this amazing model, which I think looks a bit like a succubus. It's sculpted by the talented Ben from Ritual Design, and I do believe I picked this model specifically because it reminds me a lot of the illustrations made by Luis Arroyo. That's an artist whose work I've loved for many years. And also, this model is ideal for painting a lot of different details, which, to be honest, I really need the practice. And as always, I like to start with airbrushing the skin tones. And I wanted a darker theme for this model, so I went really heavy on the warm colors, using yellow, orange and red for the shadows. I was trying to imagine she was sitting in a dark cave, only lit up by some flickering candlesticks. That was the goal I was hoping to achieve. But with airbrushing skin tones, I always find it hard to know when to stop. Say, if the skin tones are dark enough, or light enough. Because it's only when you see the rest of the figurine fully painted that you get to see the real contrasts and interactions between the colors. Which is why I like to stop on a lighter shade. Then later on, when everything is fully painted and assembled, I still have the possibility to go back in again and darken the shades a bit using different mediums like ink washes or other translucent paints. The eyes were painted the same way I always do, a light grey color painted almost to the very edge of the eyelids, making sure to leave behind a thin pink line towards the eyelashes. And as I was going for the dark theme and heavy contrasts, I went with a pitch black for the eyelashes. Once the hair is painted on and dry brushed, you can easily see if you need to tweak any of the colors a bit. And we will be coming back to that. When it comes to airbrushing clothing, I'll show you one of the most basic and straightforward ways to do this. Pick out one color, in this case, a medium brown. Then pick out a darker and a lighter shade of the same brown color. This will make up your basic color palette. Apply the midtone as a base coat. Then imagine the light coming from a single spotlight. In this case, it'll be from the top down. That means applying the dark shadow colors, holding the figurine facing away from you, letting the airbrush hit it from underneath. For applying the highlights, hold the figurine towards you in a way that lets you hit it from the top down. And that's it, you're done. Of course, this only gives you a basic, clean comic book style finish. But it's a really good starting point from which you can add a lot more details with your airbrush or paintbrush, adding different colors, filters, washes, and inks, even creating different textures, all of which you've seen me done several times in other videos. My best recommendations for airbrushing see-through or translucent fabric, like these black stockings. Do not use an opaque paint, but instead use an acrylic ink. It's a thinner, more fluid and highly pigmented paint, giving you more control and a much better result. As I'm going to peel off the masking, and before we get to all the fun details, although we never do this on this channel, I would like to say to all you long-time loyal subscribers out there, I know it's been a while since our last upload. Yes, we moved to a new house, and yeah, we built a new complete workshop, with all the stuff that comes with it. But on a more personal note, I finally had surgery done to my right hand for carpal tunnel syndrome, and it's really not a big deal. It's said to be very common among artists. The only reason I'm mentioning this is that even though everyday basic chores was back to usual-ish in just a couple of months, the handling of more subtle details took and still takes a long time, which, as you'll see, also explains why I wanted to test out different ways of adding details, while still practicing my finer motor skills, of course. So let's move on to the details. I gave the stockings a thin pinstripe on the back and painted all the edges where the masking had been. I personally think this is a really important step, as this makes the fabric look more grounded, or more believably folded tightly around the body. Kind of hard to explain, but I think you know what I mean. The top part was painted black. I think it's called a welt garter, making them look more like stay-ups, which I believe is perfect for a succubus. I have no idea what you call the fabric hanging from the waist belt. It's definitely not armor. But I took the opportunity to add some more details in the form of some ornaments. It was good practice, but as we all know too well, everyone is their own worst critic. So I painted over it and decided to try it with some custom water slide decals. We've covered in detail how to make your own custom decals in previous videos, but I've never attempted anything this large. I quickly drew up some simple ornaments using Procreate, and then simply printed them out. I also put in some really cool comic book sketches. This is of course to take advantage of the whole paper, and that'll be a part of an upcoming video. Once the ink is fully dried, it's really important to give it a couple of light coats of varnish. Glossy or matte varnish with an airbrush, or simply use a rattle can. Next, you'll need to cut out each decal separately. It doesn't really take that long, as it only needs to be a rough cut. Now you'll need to soften them up. This can be done with a paintbrush and some water, but having built my share of Gundams over the years, I find using Tamiya's decal softener is a much better solution. Usually, on smaller pieces, you can simply slide the decal in place, but I've never attempted decals that are so large before. So it was a bit of trial and error, but by the third application I think I got the hang of it. Gently using some tweezers for moving them onto the figurine, and then by being really generous with the decal softener, you can easily slide them around with a paintbrush, finally placing them exactly where you would like them to be. Then using a paintbrush, gently push out any bubbles or wrinkles. As for the piece of shoulder armor, or pauldron, I combined gilding wax along with some black acrylic paint, dry brushing these two mediums in several layers. And then, for a really fun piece of detail, this model has a large portion of her back fully exposed, so I wanted to take advantage of that and give her a large tattoo. It'll depend on if you have access to one, but these small desktop lasers seems to be rather common these days. I've actually done this quite a few times over the last couple of years. I sketched up a large dragon that I wanted to cover the whole back with. But just as I was about to apply it, I realized this drawing just had too much details for such a small surface. So instead, my wife came up with this simple butterfly design. Depending on what kind of laser you'll use, of course, there's bound to be several parameters you can adjust. So I set the depth to 80% with only one pass. And based on my experience with this so far, that's just not enough to go through all the different paint layers. And as a result of that, it will leave behind a lighter tone, which is what I'm after. And I do believe the result looks perfect for this figurine. This figurine was always going to be a test project, simply a way for me to focus on retraining my hands again. That's just to explain why I'm repainting some of the details, some of which up to several times over. So I just kept on putting in small delicate details wherever I could, Everything from simple ornaments to yet another butterfly. I also went back and repainted the eyes, only this time heavier makeup, which actually ended up looking a lot better. And that was actually good practice in more ways than one, because I've always had a tendency to go a little light on that part. And because I already had a good idea of how I wanted to paint the display base, I repainted them again. Only this time I wanted glowing red eyes, kind of like a demon or a real succubus. It'll all make sense in a couple of minutes, because I'll be going for some red hot lava. It looks great on small miniature figurines, but I don't know how it will look on a 1/10 scale. I started by assembling the figurine, just to figure out where the highlights of the lava would go. And as everything was already painted black, I simply dry brushed on some grey paint, just to help bring out some more of the details. And as for painting the molten lava, I applied some red paint. Before moving on to some brighter and more intense colors. Mediums like Intensity and Candy Ink are well suited for this. I used a bright yellow for composing the layout, then blending it in using different shades of red and orange. And the blending doesn't need to be perfect. Far from it actually, because all of this will only function as an undercoat or a base coat, from which I'll apply a thick top layer of some crackle paint. I didn't have one in black, but adding some black acrylic paint to the mix will achieve the same result. I should also mention that I gave it a top coat of some glossy varnish, as this will help the paint lift a bit from the surface. It does look a bit dark grey at the moment, but as it dries out and cures, it will start to crack and darken a lot more. By the next day, it was fully cured, and you can easily tell why it's called crackle paint. And this is where I apply the finishing touches. Stuff like some more dry brushing, airbrushing some dark red filters that would reflect from the base onto the figurine. But as far as this video goes, that was the last piece of work I did on this project. There you have it. Sort of a bit of a comeback. And there will be more videos coming. I hope you found this one useful, or at least enjoyable to watch. And if you want more of this, you know exactly what to do. Just make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and we will be sure to share our next video build with you. Thank you for watching.